Good morning. I can't put into words how grateful I am to be a part of this gathering this morning. Our topic for this first session is overcoming fear. And I want to start with some confessions. I confess that I was afraid this wouldn't happen. I was afraid that with the increase in COVID-19 numbers and Delta variants and Delta plus variants that this whole thing would get canceled. I was also afraid once I got the word and was pretty confident we would go forward that nobody would come. And yet here you are, and there's a really good number of people here, and I am really thankful for that. The fact of the matter is that our world is beset with fear. Fear of all kinds. We fear going broke. We fear the mole on our back. We fear the new employee at work. We fear all kinds of things. A week from this minute, I am scheduled to help my daughter move out of my house and into a dormitory at Freed-Hardeman University. And that comes with another load of fears. Will she go to class? Will she go to church? Who will her friends be? All kinds of fears. And we come up with all kinds of things to address our fears. We diversify our investments. We install security systems. And yet our country takes more mood-altering drugs than apparently the drug companies can even count. The average middle schooler in our country today has more anxiety than a mental patient in the 1950s because fear is everywhere. And fear is a big, brash bully. Fear crowds out a lot of spiritual blessings. Fear seldom comes along with happiness. You never hear somebody say, "I'm very content and afraid." You never hear somebody say, "I'm afraid, but I'm at peace." You never hear somebody say, "I'm afraid, and I'm really looking forward to the future. I'm very hopeful." Fear makes a lot of noise, but most of the time, it doesn't do a lot of good. But Jesus has a lot to say about fear. I want to focus on one passage this morning from Matthew chapter 8. If you'll turn there with me. Matthew chapter 8, of course, comes immediately following the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And then we see Jesus continuing his ministry with thousands of people, and he is just thronged with these gigantic crowds. And they try to get some relief from the crowds, and so they decide to go across the Sea of Galilee. I want to pick up reading right there, Matthew chapter 8, verse 23. When he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves. But Jesus himself was asleep. And they came to him and woke him, saying, "Save us, Lord, we are perishing." He said to them, "Why are you afraid, you men of little faith?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea until it became perfectly calm. The men were amazed and said, "What kind of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him?" It seems like a lot of people have a mistaken impression of what they were signing on to when they said they would be followers of Christ. Apparently, a lot of people thought that Jesus was promising a sea of glass, that it's all just going to be sunshine and butterflies. But we know that's not how it is. We know that's not what walking with Christ actually feels like. We know that's not what discipleship really looks like. If you look here in verse 23, his disciples followed him. In verse 24, and there arose a great storm. The word for storm here is seismos, seismograph, used to measure earthquakes. This is a gigantic storm. I've been to the Sea of Galilee 4 times. It seems like every time we're there, the locals have a new story to tell about somebody who drowned in the sea because they're out there swimming, they're out there, doing whatever you do on a lake, and a big storm comes up, and people drown. Every couple of years, still, to this day. And the Sea of Galilee sits on a fault line, a major fault line. So the northern edge of the Sea of Galilee today is much different than it was 2,000 years ago because of the tumultuous earthquakes that have occurred there over the last 2,000 years. And so when Matthew says seismos, he's not exaggerating. And he was there. He's inspired by the Holy Spirit. Jesus promised that he would guide you into all things. He would bring to your remembrance all things. But this was part of Matthew's memory. He experienced it personally. And he says this storm was a boot shaker. It was huge. It was terrifying. Even though they're with Jesus, you still face storms. The sea was being covered. We had a wonderful dinner last night with several preachers, and we traded stories about the people we've known, including 2 people at the table who've had COVID-19. There are men who are not here today who were planning to be here because they've been exposed to COVID-19. And I'm thankful they're not here. I'm not thankful they were exposed, but I'm thankful they exercised the caution and discipline to try to protect everyone else. But followers of Christ are not immune to COVID-19. Followers of Christ get cancer. Followers of Christ bury children. Followers of Christ suffer betrayal and divorce and abandonment. We're not promised a smooth sea. It's not the absence of storms. And the message of Matthew chapter 8, is not the absence of storms. It's who we meet or who we discover in the storms. We discover a calm Savior. The thunder roars, but Jesus snores. The disciples scream while Jesus dreams. To him, it's not even a threat. It's not even worthy of a mild level of anxiety to know that there's a great storm raging around. It's not that important. And so he's able to sleep, and he even rebukes those who overreact to the storm, who overreact to the threat, to the danger. One of the big problems with fear, one of the big dangers of fear, is that it attacks God's goodness. Verse 25, Matthew records the disciples coming and saying, "Save us, Lord, for we are perishing." But Mark chapter 4 records these same events. And in verse 38, part of what they said to Jesus, according to Mark, is, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Jesus, don't you care that we're dying? Jesus, don't you care that we're suffering? Jesus, don't you care that this is horrible for us? Fear makes you question God's goodness. They don't question whether Jesus is there. They question whether he has their interests at heart. The same thing happens to us. Fear unleashes doubt and anger. Think about what they could have said. They could have said, Jesus, do you know that there are these huge waves that are filling up our boat? You're aware of that, right? They could have said, Jesus, I'm really afraid. Jesus, I'm really feeling like I'm about to die, and I'm not sure what to do about it. But that's not what they said. They said, don't you even care? Does God even care? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. He who comes to God must do two things. He must believe that God is. The demons also believe and shudder. And that he who comes to God must believe that God is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. Faith is about believing in the goodness of God, believing in the willingness of God to provide, to protect, in his time, according to his wisdom, in his way. And fear threatens that. Fear threatens and raises doubts about Jesus' character and the character of God. It also turns us into control freaks. Turns us into the kind of people who think we have to control every little detail. We have to manage every little risk. We have to neutralize every threat, or things can't go right. We can't be successful. We can't do what we're supposed to do unless we are in charge. And that's what they're saying to Jesus. If you don't take me out of this situation, then I'm not following anymore. Don't you even care? It's a question, but it's also a threat. It's also a threat. If you don't even care about me enough to keep me alive and to keep me out of these storms, surely you knew the storm was coming. I'm not getting in a boat with you ever again. I hear people say that kind of thing at church. Well, they told me they would be here and they didn't show up. They called me 10 minutes before and they didn't come. I am never doing anything with them again. It's a threat because I'm in control. Because if I can't control every detail and if I can't control everything everybody else does who's supposed to be part of this with me, then I'm at risk. I'm going to die. And I'm not going to participate. Think about what this fear does to their memory. Think about what the apostles have already seen and already been through. You back up to chapter 4 of Matthew, verse 23. It says, Jesus was going throughout all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. And notice this, healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness among the people. And then you come forward back to chapter 8, just a few verses from where we started in verse 23, back up to verse 16 of Matthew chapter 8. They brought to him many who were demon-possessed, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were ill. The disciples have seen this probably for months on end. They have literally seen over 1,000 miracles in a day. They may have seen 10,000 miracles in a week. John says, there's so much, you couldn't write it all down. The world couldn't hold it all. He did so much. But when the storm comes and the fear rises, you forget all that. You forget all that and you say, Jesus, don't you care that we're perishing? Don't you see what's going on? Fear makes safety our God. And we begin to worship the risk-free life. And all of our focus gets centered on the neutralizing of threats. The problem with that is you can't love as deeply as Jesus loves because it requires you to be vulnerable. To love your wife the way you need to love your wife, you've got to open yourself up so that she can hurt you. To love your brothers and sisters at church the way you're supposed to love your brothers and sisters at church, it leaves you open that when they fall short, it's going to bring you pain. And fear tells you to close that down, to keep that vulnerability back, and to stay away from that kind of love. It keeps us from dreaming wildly. What if we fail? What if it goes wrong? What if we don't have enough? What if nobody comes? What if nobody participates? What if we can't get any help? What if, all of which say, let's not do it as big. Let's not try as hard. Let's not shoot as high. Because of fear. How about this one? What if I need it later? What if an emergency comes? You know, what if one of us gets sick, or what if one of us loses our job and then we've given that money away? What if? And so we don't give nearly as generously because of fear. And so fear hampers us. It makes us smaller. It makes us less effective and less fruitful. Now, I'm at risk of going overboard here, and so I want to balance out a little bit. Fear is not always a sin. When you're walking through one of the trails in the woods and you hear a rattle, fear is really helpful. It sharpens your senses. It makes you attuned to immediate danger, and that's a good thing. When I see a teenager at church change their style of dress and start sitting separately from the other children and refusing to look at me or speak to me when they walk out the door, I know part of that is the aging process and the transition into independence that happens at certain ages. But I also know that child's at risk. I also know that we need to be sensitive and attentive to the threats in that kid's life. And that fear is good because it focuses on issues that need to be solved. But fear can also bring us to sin. Sometimes we treat our fear with anger, and we blow up and we burst because we see somebody doing something that we think is a risk. And so to deal with that, we try to exert the maximum amount of control. I've done this to my children way more times than they deserve. Way more times than they deserve. We're tempted to treat our fear with alcohol or with drugs, even legal drugs. We look for a chemical solution to a spiritual problem. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. God has not given us a spirit of timidity. King James says a spirit of fear, but of power and love and discipline. That's what must motivate us. That's what must control our minds. The power of God, the love of God, and the discipline to which He calls us. And then we'll trust Him with the threats. And when He's given us opportunity, when He's given us a responsibility to help deal with a problem and solve a problem, we'll exercise discipline and try to address that problem. But if it's a problem we can't solve, we trust God with it. A spirit of power and love and discipline. Jesus wages war against fear. I don't know, these commercials have been running for several years now for this insurance company where they say, we can't stop you from becoming your parents, but we can save you money on car insurance. And they have these, to me, hilarious vignettes about, people saying things and, people walking through the store with their phone on, their call on loudspeaker and stuff like that. If you printed out directions to get here today, you're in the right place. But one of the first commercials they had, and one of the ones that I thought was the funniest, was we can't stop you from saying the things your dad says or that your dad used to say. Defense wins championships. I've said that. Or why would I replace it? It still works. or the one that I've said the most. Are we trying to cool the whole neighborhood? I wonder what my kids will think of me having said most frequently. I can remember the preacher who baptized me, the thing that he said most frequently that I remember, two things really stand out to me, but the one that is the most is the Word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing as far as the division of soul and spirit, of joints and marrow, is a discerner of the thoughts and intentions of the heart. Jesus is recorded in the Gospels to have given about 125 direct commandments, specific, pointed instructions. 21 of those, 16%, more than double number 2. Number 1, do not fear. Do not fear. Like Matthew 28, why are you afraid, you men of little faith? Jesus wages war on fear. And if his disciples remembered him saying something over and over again, it was probably that. Do not fear. And the message is the same for us. The message is clear and powerful to us. If you look here in verse 27, they say, what kind of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? Jesus' reason for the disciples not to fear is the same reason that God gave to Moses on Mount Horeb. It's the same reason that God gave to Joshua on the banks of the Jordan River. I'm with you. Jesus is the reason that we don't fear. Jesus is the reason that we take courage. Matthew chapter 14, when Jesus walks across the sea and the disciples are straining against the oar and they think he's a ghost, immediately Jesus spoke to them saying, take courage. Here it is. It is I. Do not be afraid. When Jesus is in your boat, you don't have to be afraid. When Jesus is in your boat and your priorities align with his priorities, when what he wants to happen is what you want to happen, you don't have to be afraid. He may put you in situations that are dangerous and frightening, but if you keep your eye on him and on his power, your fear comes into proper focus and your path forward becomes clear. It's what Hebrews 13 verses 5 and 6 says. For he himself has said, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you, so that we confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What shall man do to me? One more place where Jesus tells them not to fear is after he's resurrected. It's such a beautiful study to see the transition that the apostles never complete until the resurrection, and how they continue to struggle with Jesus' identity and with Jesus' mission and the nature of Jesus' kingdom until he's resurrected. But then when he's resurrected, they're still afraid. So in Luke chapter 24, verse 38, Jesus appears to them and he says, why are you troubled? Why do doubts arise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have. He really came out of the grave. He was killed. He was murdered. He was buried. And he was resurrected to life physically, with his physical body that you could touch. He ate a piece of fish to prove that he was real. And if he can do that, he can keep his promises to us. And so in John 14, he says, do not let your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. He says, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and I'm going to come and receive you. Your future is assured, and it's proven by his resurrection. And that's why he says over and over again, do not fear.